For the moment we've all been waiting for, we're going to hear from our speaker, Brian Holman. I just want to tell you a little bit about Brian. I'm sure many of you are aware of Brian and about his ministry. But before we hear from him, Brian had a successful Major League Baseball career with the Montreal Expos and also the Seattle Mariners and the Cincinnati Reds. Brian was forced to retire in 1994 due to an arm injury. And Brian began his business career in 1995, where he served as a managing director as well as a senior client advisor to the Ronald Blue and Company. And Brian now focuses a majority of his attention on his motivational speaking, as well as advising and mentoring both amateur and professional baseball players. He remains heavily involved in youth baseball in and around the Dallas-Fort Worth area in Texas and across the United States, where he conducts private pitching lessons, camps, and clinics for teams and individuals out of Texas Edge Sports in Granbury, Texas, where he's from. Brian is highly respected and sought after as a motivational speaker, from the tragic loss of his daughter Cassidy to leukemia, to his son David's heroic battle with a brain tumor and subsequent journey into professional baseball. He and his family know the pain of personal loss and have overcome great adversity. Brian uses his life experiences to encourage and inspire a host of audiences. His playing days have had a tremendous impact when shared at churches, youth, family, and men's outreach conferences, sports award banquets, and corporate events across the United States and Canada. He is a member of the Major League Baseball Players Alumni Association, and in 2007, he was inducted into the Kansas Baseball Hall of Fame, along with Joe Carter, Bill James, and Phil Stevenson. He and his wife, Jamie, live in Granbury, Texas, and have 4 children, Scott, David, Jennifer, and Cassidy. Let's have a warm welcome for Mr. Brian Holman.
Offering by Holman, fouls it. Riley's double. The rest way of that man's right arm. He has been ahead of all the hitters that he's faced, just about. He's had trouble. The third Mariner pitcher to go 8 innings or more with no hitter. Langston was the last. Here's the 1-1 pitch to Felix Jose. Takes it in there, 1 ball and 2 strikes. All of his pitches have been working tonight. Fastball, the cutter, the slider, the change. They go around, was it up? Yes, Dave Valley. Here's Walter White. This is outside. Here's the 1-0 pitch. This is inside. Here's the 2-0. Weiss with a ground ball. Reynolds there. And Brian Holman is 1 out away from a perfect game.
Holman 1 out away. It is 9:53 at night. The pitch swung on and a fly ball belted deep to right. Cut out to the track. Fly away.
But it took an awfully long time. This game had a great rhythm, and all of a sudden the rhythm came to a stop.
In there for a strike. Henderson. Option foul. Out of play, 2-2. And Henderson strikes out. And the ball game is over. Brian Holman with a 1-hitter, 6-1 victory.
I hate that stinking video. With a passion, but it was fun. There's a theme to this. This is why we start this with a baseball video, but there's a theme to this. But first of all, good morning. Thank you for coming. I'm excited to be back in West Palm Beach. I have a huge history here in West Palm Beach. I literally started my baseball career here when I was at the Montreal Expos, and so spring trainings. I played in the Florida State League here in West Palm and got to experience Florida for many years and love Florida. And the Breakers was always the Taj Mahal, right? Coming down here, and a lot of minor league players, when they played, would go and work at the Breakers as valet parking guys or whatever. So they had a huge history here, and that was always a coveted job. So, before I came up here, I got a text from my daughter this morning, and she said, Daddy, she just got off work, and she's a nurse at a children's hospital in Fort Worth. And she said, I just got off work. I know you're speaking today. I'm praying for you. You're going to do great. And I said, well, thank you, honey. I appreciate that. She goes, I'm praying for you. And P.S., check your fly. So if you saw me coming up here, I was doing that with my daughter. She has my back and watches out for me as much as possible. But it is awesome to be able to come and share with men. I have a big responsibility. And I think it's sometimes we don't take it strongly enough, that the impact that we have on people, our families, just overall in general. And we're going to talk about this morning about loss and pain and the difficult things that happen in our lives and how we deal with those things. It's not easy, and we have to focus on the goodness of God and what we need to be doing in the midst of chaos and pain and hurt and loss. In 1993, I had just undergone my third arm operation. I was sitting at home in Seattle, Washington, kind of feeling a little sorry for myself in my house, and I was frustrated because I was on the disabled list. Oh, excuse me, it's called the injured list now. I was on the injured list, and the team, Seattle Mariners, were down playing the Texas Rangers, and I was very frustrated and just, I can't play. There's nothing worse than a professional baseball player who can't play baseball. And so I'm sitting there frustrated and bitter and pouting a little bit, but I'm also excited because something magical had just happened in our family. See, my little brother Brad had just been called up to the major leagues. And not only had been called to the major leagues, he had been called up to the Seattle Mariners. So you have two brothers in the major leagues on the same team at the same time. That just doesn't happen very often in professional sports. And so he was actually with the team, and they were in Texas playing, and I was home on the DL hanging out. And I'm listening to the game on the radio, and Dave Niehaus is talking, and Randy Johnson starts the game, and he's pitching, and he's got like 37 strikeouts in 5 innings or something, typical Randy. So, for those non-baseball players, you can't really get 37 strikeouts in 5 innings. But I turned off the radio, and I went upstairs to play with my kids. And about an hour later, I hear the phone ring. My wife answers the phone, and I hear her gasp. She drops the phone, she runs upstairs, and she looked like she's seen a ghost. I said, honey, what's the matter? And she goes, Brian, Brad's just been hit in the head with a line drive. I said, what do you mean? He's not even pitching. She goes, no, Randy was pitching, and he ended up throwing a ball up and in on somebody and got kicked out of the game. Imagine that. And Brad went in the game. So I ran downstairs. As soon as I ran downstairs, I turned on ESPN. And as soon as I turned on ESPN, Chris Berman is there, and he said, if there's anyone squeamish, do not watch this. And I watched my brother Brad throw a 94-mile-an-hour fastball to Mario Diaz, and Mario Diaz hit it up the middle, clocked it over 100 miles an hour. He didn't even get a chance to get his glove up, and bam, the ball hit him right in the forehead. Hit him so hard in the forehead, it bounced from his head all the way into the Mariner dugout on a fly for a ground rule double. And it just dropped him like he'd been shot. He hit the ground as he was trying to grab his head. His hands were shaking uncontrollably. The paramedics came out. Trainers came out. They put him on the stretcher, took him in to the training room, and then took him on to the hospital. Now, I'm not going to finish telling you about what happened to my brother Brad until the end of my story, so you're going to have to listen to everything I have to say, or you're not going to know what happened to him. But as I'm sitting there watching my little brother, it flashed in my mind this one thing, this incredible game that sustained us, that helped us survive as kids, is the one thing that could potentially take his life right now. And in one of those times where you just flash back at as we were growing up and how much baseball meant to us. Baseball in my family was everything. We grew up in an alcoholic home and all that implies and the craziness that goes on with that kind of family. And baseball kept us alive. When my dad would come home from work, if he'd been drinking, my mom would look out the window and she'd say, he's okay, no worries. But if he'd been drinking, she'd say, run to your rooms. And we'd run to our room and we'd sit there and we'd listen to my dad argue and fight and just break things and we'd sneak out the windows and we played wiffle ball. We'd do whatever we could to play baseball. We didn't have anything. We were poor as poor could be. I tell kids all the time, they're at a disadvantage. We had no cell phones. We had no computers. We had no video games. We had no cable television. We had brothers, bats, balls, and gloves. And all we did was play baseball all day long. I would go to work with my dad in the summers because he needed my help. He was in construction. 13 years old, we'd drive across Denver and go to work. And about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, my dad had been drinking so much that he was unable to work, and he would go sit in the car, and he's unable to drive, and I'd be trying to finish up stuff and get things done because I knew that was going to help put food on our table. And by about 4 or 5 o'clock, I'm looking at the clock, and I'm thinking, you know what, I got a game at 7. I'm 13, and I'm thinking, he's not going to wake up. So I did what every normal 13-year-old would do. I got in the car, started it up, and I'd drive across Denver in rush hour traffic to get to my game. White-knuckling it the whole way, man, just thinking, I got to get to the field. I got to get to the field. I got to get on that baseball field. I'd pull up. My dad was still asleep in the car. I'd get out. There was my coach. He'd come walking over. He'd have a Gatorade and a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and he'd say, it's okay. Put his arm around me. Give me something to eat. He'd say, go out on the field and do everything you can to take it out on the other team. And I did, man. I walked on those lines. I played like a man possessed. Crazy, as hard as I could. And that helped me, as bad as that situation was and as frustrating as it was, it gave me fuel to compete. And I competed. By the time I got a senior in high school, I was throwing 95 miles an hour, started getting the attention of scouts, and the Montreal Expos decided to draft me that year. Out of all the high school and college players in the United States, the Montreal Expos picked me in the first round. I was the 16th player picked in the country that year out of high school. Now, that's not to brag or boast. Tell you how dumb the Expos were for drafting me 16th pick that year. The Boston Red Sox had the 19th pick, and they picked some guy at the University of Texas by the name of Roger Clemens. So the Expos didn't get quite as good a deal as the Red Sox did. But I started my professional career, and I started it here in West Palm Beach. And I walk into the locker room, first time, 19 years old. I get invited to spring training, and I walk in, and there's Andre Dawson, Gary Carter, Tim Raines, Tim Wallach. Unbelievable players. I'm just in awe. And I go out to throw my first major league batting practice. I walk out on the field, and I look in to face my first hitter, and I just went, oh, no. It was Pete Rose. Pete Rose was in camp that year with the Expos, and I want to show him how hard I can throw, and then I'm going to be, so I rear back at those balls as hard as I can, 95 miles an hour, right over the top of Pete's head. Drop him. Helmet flies, bat flies. He lands in the dirt, and he gets up, and all the reporters and everybody around going, oh, did you just see that? And they're writing stuff down, and I am scared to death. I am so humbled at that moment, I don't even know what to think. My legs are shaking. I'm so scared. First time I ever prayed in my life, I said, God, just let me throw one strike, just a strike. But I want to show him I can throw pretty hard. So I rear back again. Next pitch, 95 miles an hour, right under Pete's chin. Flip him on his back. Helmet goes flying. Bat goes flying. Lands there. 2 pitches, I flip Pete twice. Everybody's laughing. All the reporters, all the guys around the cage, and Pete's not laughing. He points his bat at me and he goes, listen, kid, I'm a lot more afraid of you right now than you are of me. He says, throw the beep, beep, beep ball over the plate. And I said, yes, sir, Mr. Rose. And I just began to throw it like a dart. This very confident 19-year-old young man was humbled like that. Baseball will humble you. Life will humble you. So I started my career. I'm in West Palm Beach, and there's a lot of hoopla about this first-round pick. In fact, they interviewed the pitching coach named Larry Bernarth, and Larry said some article, and I get the article the next morning. I'm going to start my first professional game, and I read the article, and he says, hey, yeah, this kid from Kansas, man, he's got a golden arm. Don't be surprised if he throws a no-hitter. He's that good. So I read the article that morning. I read it again about 10 o'clock. I read it again about 12. 2 o'clock, I read it for about the 18th time. By 6 o'clock, I've read it again, and I go out, and I'm thinking, I'm going to throw a no-hitter tonight. And you know what? I threw a no-hitter because I walked the first 6 out of 7 batters I faced. I balked. I threw 2 wild pitches. I didn't get a single out in the first inning, but I didn't give up a hit. That's how my professional career started. And it got worse as it went along. Minor league baseball is a tough gig. You get no money. You're traveling. It's hard. But you have to keep your eye on the prize. No matter what you hear this morning, just know this, that keep your eye on the prize. That life is full of difficult things. And no matter what happens to you, you never, ever, ever quit. Ever. So I kept my eye on the prize. I kept battling and kept focusing. And 4.5 years in the minor leagues. And that day finally comes that I get the call. The Montreal Expos are, congratulations, you're going to pitch against the Pittsburgh Pirates on Saturday. I'm like, Pittsburgh Pirates? The Pirates? They go, yeah, the Pirates. Next thing I know, I'm standing in Olympic Stadium. 40,000 crazy French Canadian people in Montreal in the stands. And whether they were cheering and they were so loud, it's because they had those little transistor radios. They were listening to the Montreal Canadiens hockey game. They didn't care anything about baseball, but they were pumped up and fired up and they were excited. I look in to face my first hitter. It was Barry Bonds. Next hitter was Bobby Bonilla, Andy Van Slyke, Mike LaValliere, Sid Bream, Jay Bell, Jose Lean. These guys just kept coming. Well, unfortunately, I didn't win my first professional start. I lost, but my second start was against the Atlanta Braves, and they had a young rookie pitcher on the mound by the name of Tom Glavine, and I threw a complete game shutout for my first Major League win. I'll never forget about that game, though, is as I'm warming up to face the Braves, I've got electric stuff in the bullpen. My arm feels amazing. And I get done throwing, and the same pitching coach who saw me throw my first professional game that was so bad was now the Major League pitching coach. And before I walked out, he said, "Do you remember the first game you ever pitched in West Palm?" I said, "Well, I'm trying to forget about it right now. I got other things to do." And he goes, "Think about how far you've come." He said, "Ask yourself these 3 questions. Do you believe that you have good stuff?" I think. Do you believe that your stuff is good enough to get Major League hitters out? I hope so. I mean, what am I supposed to say to that? He said, "Do you believe you belong in the major leagues?" I don't know. I'm scared to death. I'm 23 years old. I don't know what to do. I'm just hoping to get through this, through every pitch. He goes, "Look around you. Wake up. You just threw a bullpen to a major league catcher. You're walking out on a major league field. You're going to stand on a major league mound. You're going to face major league hitters. If you don't believe you belong here by now, it's going to be a short rodeo." I don't know what it was, man, but something clicked. I said, I belong here. About a year and a half later, Randy Johnson and I get traded to the Seattle Mariners, and in 1990, as you saw that perfect game, almost perfect game, I have to say that now. In 1990, I was the opening day Seattle Mariners starter. I came 1 out away from a perfect game, and during that game, what was so crazy about it is the game before that game, I had pitched against the world champion Oakland A's in Seattle. Game was tied 1-1, and I hang a slider, and Mark McGwire hits a 3-run home run off me, and I lose the game. I look at the schedule, and I got to pitch against him again, but this time in Oakland. And as I start warming up in Oakland, I don't have good stuff. Nothing's working, and I'm thinking this is not going to last very long. You got Mark McGwire and Ricky Henderson and Jose Canseco and Dave Henderson and Carney Lansford, and I'm facing Bob Welch. And next thing I know, as I'm throwing, I'm going, man, I'm in trouble. When you're in trouble and you got to go face something hard, don't overcomplicate things. Go back to the basics of what you know. I went back to the basics of Little League. Throw first pitch strikes. Get ahead. Throw ground balls. Pitch inside. Don't hang a slider to Canseco or McGwire this time. Just go out and pitch. I go out through the first inning, second inning, 4th inning, 5th inning, 6th inning, 7th inning. I strike out Jose Canseco, and I run into the dugout. And as I sit down in the dugout, boom, everybody gets away from me. Nobody look at me. Nobody would talk to me. Nobody even get me a drink of water. I didn't know anything was going on until I looked at the scoreboard. As soon as I see the scoreboard, I see zeros all the way across the scoreboard. I realize not only do I have a no-hitter, not a single Oakland A has reached first base. I have a perfect game. I wasn't nervous at all until I saw what I could lose. And now all of a sudden I'm thinking, now it's serious. I could possibly lose this. I go out the 8th inning, 1, 2, 3 in the 8th inning. I go out for the 9th inning, get the first out, the second out. What you don't see in the video, though, is after I get the second out, I'm standing on the mound and I'm thinking, this is amazing. I'm going to be in the Hall of Fame. They're going to want my hat and my jersey and my jock and my underwear and my glove and a ball, and they're going to erect this locker in Cooperstown for all eternity, and now I'm going to be immortalized. It's great. And then they announced, now batting number 44, Ken Phelps, and 43,000 people in Oakland Coliseum began to stand up and cheer. It sounded like a 747 going over your head, and the entire stadium was shaking as all that was focused on you. I'm telling you, it's goosebumps. Unbelievable feeling. And then, of course, I rear back, throw the pitch. Ken Phelps ruins the perfect game and everything with a no-hitter, or with a home run. At that moment, you want to just crawl into the fetal position and suck your thumb because you know you're never going to get a chance to do that. But Ricky Henderson was coming up next. You don't have a choice. You get back on the mound, you toe the rubber, and you attack. Let me say you something. Life is you could be at the top of the mountain 1 minute. You make one bad pitch, one mistake, something happens, and the next thing you know, you come crashing down. That's baseball, and that's life. So in 1990, as the opening day starter, I'm at the peak of my career. I'm throwing the ball well. 1991, I have another great career season. And the next thing I know, my shoulder's hurt. And I'm having surgery, career-ending surgery. 1993, my brother's in the Mariner organization. I see him get hit in the head. 1994, after my fourth arm operation, I have to make the decision to retire. As I'm sitting at home in Seattle, Washington, in my living room, I'm announcing my retirement. There's one camera. There's one reporter. I'm thinking a little bit to myself, shouldn't there be more to this retirement thing? I mean, big old press conference or whatever. It didn't work that way. Made the announcement, and I'm thinking, this is the hardest thing I've ever done. Hardest thing I've ever done. If I can get through this, I can get through anything. And little did I know what our family was about to endure. We ended up moving to a small town in Ellensburg, Washington, on a farm, and living the life. I was working for a financial advisory firm, and we had horses. We were a big family. We boated, we skied, we snowboarded, we did all kinds of stuff, and we were in the process of adopting our youngest daughter. We had been through the process of getting everything done. We have 3 of our own natural children, so we decided to adopt, and we were in the process, and on our 13th wedding anniversary, my wife and I decided to go out and have some fun, and in the afternoon we're shopping, hanging out. The kids went out with some friends. My sons went up and were snowboarding with some friends at Snoqualmie Pass, and my daughter was hanging out. We're just having a great time, and the phone rings. And as the phone rings, I hear this very frantic mom on the other line, and all I hear is, David chairlift fell. I begin to try to get her to calm down and start talking, and as we start getting more of the information, we find out that David had fallen on the last run of the day 30 feet out of a chairlift. He had broken his left femur in 4 places. He'd broken his left arm and wrist. He had a concussion. He had a hole in his lung, a lacerated kidney, a lacerated liver. He was in rough shape, and we're flying over the mountain trying to get to him, and we get to the hospital, and as soon as we get in, you can just see the relief on this little boy's face that his mom and dad are there. We start to look and do surgeries, and what we got to do, we start doing CAT scans and everything. He has a concussion, and as they do a CAT scan, the doctor came out and they said, Mr. and Mrs. Holman, I hate to tell you this, but David has a brain tumor. I said, no, he doesn't. He just got hurt in a skiing accident. She goes, no, this might actually be a blessing. That night, as he's laying in the intensive care unit, 24 hours earlier, he was a healthy, vibrant, incredible little snowboard baseball player, and now he's got tubes sticking all out of his body. He's broken, and I was exhausted. I hit my knees, and I was reminded that Abraham Lincoln once said, I'm often reminded that when I'm on my knees, it's because I have nowhere else to go. I was totally, completely, utterly dependent on God to help with my son. Well, we began to do the rehab on his leg. They said that the tumor was most likely benign, so let's just watch it and monitor it. We started doing that. In the process, he starts getting better, so we go ahead and do the adoption. We fly to the Marshall Islands, and we adopt our daughter. When they brought us our daughter, she was 3.5 years old, and she had been abandoned living on the streets. She had one little dress to her name. She had nothing else in her life. Completely malnourished, with no family. They brought her to our hotel, and there this little girl was. Her hair was like straw. She had boils all over her body. She was very thin and malnourished and sick, and we brought her in. We started giving her antibiotics and gave her some food, and we gave her a bath and put her pair of pajamas on, and first pair of pajamas she probably ever owned. And she crawled up in my lap, and I held her, sang to her. First time she'd ever been held by a dad. If you don't think your job's important as a father, think again. We get her home, and she was an amazing kid. She was loud and crazy and boisterous, just like a Holman. She loved running around and being loud, and she was doing great. David's brain tumor was benign. It's not growing. He's healthy. Things are going well, and we're back into the scheme of life again, and Cassie's in preschool and doing great, and we we get a phone call from Cassidy's teacher. She said, you need to come get Cassie. She's running a temperature. She doesn't feel good. She says her legs are hurting. That's kind of odd. So we go over and get her, and we take her to the doctor. The doctor looks at her and says, she's probably just got the flu or something. So we took her home and called us if there's any other issues. 2 days later, Cassie's got a temperature of 104, and we cannot get the temperature down. We rush her to the emergency room. The doctor runs some tests, and the doctor comes out, and I'd seen that same look. He said, Mr. and Miss Holman, I'm sorry to tell you this, but Cassidy has leukemia. I said, that's not possible. I already have a son with a brain tumor. And the long battle with cancer begins. Lost hair, months and months on end in the hospital. You spend every dime you have and more trying to save your kids. While one day they're pushing Cassidy into an MRI, they're pushing David into a CAT scan, and as they come out, they said, we're sorry to tell you this, David's brain tumor's growing. And now we have to have the brain tumor removed. It's insanity as all this begins to hit your family. We know David's going to have his brain tumor removed, and on his 11th birthday, he's at his Little League game, and I'm his coach, and we're playing and having a great game, and he's just struggling. He goes to pitch, he walks 4 or 5 guys in a row, he goes to hit, he strikes out 3 times, he makes several errors. He's just having a tough time. And you can see the weight of the world on this little boy's shoulders as he's trying to comprehend what it's going to be like to have his skull open up and this tumor removed. He's having a tough time. We get in with the game, and we're driving home, and of course he's got tears in his eyes in the back seat. I said, man, it's okay, hang in there. Everybody has bad games. I had lots of bad games as a kid. I did okay. He said, oh, Daddy, it's not baseball. Daddy, what if this is my last birthday? Baseball had no bearing at that moment. I pulled the car over, I put him on my lap, I just hugged him and cried with him and prayed with him. I said, you're going to be okay. No matter what happens, you keep battling. Next thing I know, he's in for brain surgery. As the surgeries get done, there were complications. The tumor was located in David's right frontal lobe in his motor strip. So when they resected the tumor, he had a stroke. And when he woke up, he was paralyzed on his entire left side. His face was drooping. He couldn't move his hand or arm. Barely move his legs. They wheel him out of surgery. He's awake. The first thing he said was, Dad, I can't play baseball like this. I said, you're never going to quit. You're going to keep your eye on the prize, and no matter what you go through, you're going to keep battling. You're going to stay focused. And he did. Months on months of rehab trying to get back to this little boy. He never complained. He just did his rehab. Every day we'd try to make him play the piano. And we weren't going to make him play the piano, but he would play the piano. He'd pick his arm up and he'd put it on the keys and he'd try to make a sound. Not a word would come out. Nothing. He kept trying and his fingers could not push the keys enough to make a sound. And one day, several months later, I'm in the kitchen. He's in there trying to do it, and all of a sudden I hear, tink, tink. Dad, come here, watch this. He could barely push his fingers down, but he made noise. So excited. Tink, tink. He started getting a little better, a little healthier. He'd start playing baseball again. He couldn't squeeze the glove, so I'd put him in the outfield, and ball would go out there. He'd go to catch it. Ball would fall out. You hear some parent in the background, man, that kid's no good. What's he doing? No idea what this little boy had just gone through. He never quit. He kept battling, and he stayed focused on the prize. And today, he's a 6'6", 230-pound right-handed pitcher in the Colorado Rockies organization. He's in AAA. Never quit battling. Cassidy never quit battling, clear up to the day she took her last breath. I had never met a child who loved life more than this little girl. She would tell me every day, Daddy, I would rather be sick and have a family than be well and not have a family. She loved her family. And God took her. I don't know why. I don't have the answers for that. But I'm comforted by this fact that I know that we invested in the life of that little girl. She prayed with her and she accepted Jesus Christ, and we know without a doubt when she took her last breath in that hospital bed that she was with Jesus because we invested in that little girl. Greatest investment you can make. Life is hard. There's There's loss, there's pain, there's hurt, there's frustration. Keep your eye on the prize. Talking to my brother the night he gets hit in the head. We start talking about what it's like to get hit in the head with a line drive. And, big brothers, we tease each other a lot and mess with each other. And I said, well, of course, you must be much smarter now that you got hit in the head. And he is. He's doing fine now. He's the AAA pitching coach of the Washington Nationals. But as he starts sharing this story with me, it's amazing. He said, Brian, he said, I threw the ball. The ball got hit so hard, he said, it came back at me. It looked like an aspirin coming at me. It was so small. He said, it hit me in the head so hard, he said, I literally felt my brain move in my skull. He said, remember when we were kids and Dad would say, if you don't knock it off, I'm going to hit you so hard, your teeth are going to rattle in your head? I mean, you can't say that in these days, but back in those days, he said, it's true. My teeth rattled in my head. He said, and then I hit the ground, and he said, the people came out, and they're rushing and talking, and they sound like Charlie Brown's teacher. Wah, 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 wah. I couldn't hear a word they were saying. They put me on the stretcher, and they took me back into the training room. He says, I'm laying on the training table. They set me up. He had a fractured sinus cavity. He had a concussion. He had a detached retina. But they said he set me up, and he said as soon as they set me up, blood began to come out of my nose. He said, I asked myself 3 questions. First question was, am I going to die? Second question was, if I die, will I go to heaven? And he said, the third question was, if I go to heaven, will my family know I'm in heaven? And he said, you know what, Brian? He said, the peace of God that surpasses all comprehension flooded over me. And I knew without a doubt if I died today that I would go to heaven. He knew that he knew that he knew. And as my little baby brother shared that story with me, I wept. I wept on the phone. Because that little baby brother that I used to do all those horrible, mean things to when he was a kid, throw ice water on him when he was in the shower and throw him outside in his underwear and it was snowing, hold him down and poke his chest until it was red, dangle spit over him and suck it up right before it lands on his face, holding him down, all those mean things. If it fell out, oops, sorry, Brad, it was an accident, all those terrible, mean things I did to him. 6 months earlier, when we were in spring training together with the Seattle Mariners, I shared the gospel with my little brother. And I led him in a prayer as he accepted Jesus Christ in his life. He knew that he knew that he knew that if he died that day, he would go to heaven. What a great investment. Great investment in my brother. And to this day, my brothers and I are best friends. For what we went through together as kids, what we went through together professionally, what we've gone through together as our families. No greater friends than your brothers or your sisters. With all the stuff I've gone through in life and the crazy things, I lost my oldest son 2 years ago. I've had open heart surgery to repair a valve in my heart. There are just many things that happen to us as Christians. When I became a Christian, I thought, nothing bad's ever going to happen. Never going to go anything hard. God says, hey, in this world you're going to have some tribulation. But be of good cheer because I've overcome the world. I always leave with what I call my tips for successful living. These are just my tips. You don't have to follow these tips, but they're just something that I go through about once a week and look and make sure I'm sticking with these things. First tip, trust God. Place your trust in God, and He will make your path straight. That's Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Everybody knows that. It's true. Put your trust in Him, He'll make your path straight. Love your family. Love your family. It's the only family you have. If you have rifts or you got some petty things going on that's creating, get rid of that. Go love your family. We all got Cousin Eddies. Dennis is a Cousin Eddie. There's no doubt in my mind Dennis is a Cousin Eddie and his family. Lots of Cousin Eddies, man. Love your family. My mom was my biggest fan as a baseball fan. She loved her boys and she loved watching baseball. I lost my mom 3 years ago. My biggest fan. My mom wasn't the kind of fan, oh, honey, it's okay, you'll be fine. No, she'd be, suck it up, cupcake, let's go, throw strikes. Come on. She was that kind of mom. Encourage at least one person every day. 90% of education's encouragement. If you encourage one person every day, when you go through the grocery line or you go through a checkout line, you go through something, you don't know if that person's dealing with something hard. Most of the time been up for, nights on end battling leukemia. I'd go to the Starbucks and the lady in front of me is complaining why her latte's not hot enough. Seriously? You never know what people are going through. Encourage, encourage, encourage. Live a simple life. Live a simple life. Don't get caught up in the why nots, what ifs, how comes, not fairs, why me's. It's a waste of stinking time. It's a waste of time. Live a simple life. Don't store up for yourselves treasures on earth. Store up for yourselves treasures in heaven. I'm telling you, you can have a big fat bank account. You can drive the nicest car, the biggest house. It can be gone like that. Something happens, kids get sick, you get sick, it's gone. The greatest investments that you can make are in the lives of people. The greatest return on an investment is not in your IRA. The greatest return that you make is a return that's eternity. It's an infinity return. You invest in people, that return is forever. The greatest investments you can make are in the lives of people. And that's why I coach today. I get to make investments in the lives of kids. Tell someone your goals. Whatever those goals are, I don't care what they are, how lofty, how small, tell someone your goals, and that person will come alongside you, and they will help you fulfill your goals. You know, with everything that's gone on in our family, we have goals. And we also have a saying. There's things that matter and there's things that don't. People matter, stuff don't. Stuff is but a vapor. Eternity is forever. Be a team player. A rising tide lifts all ships. It is not about you. It's about your team. When my son went to college, he said, "Dad, if you could give me any advice, what would it be?" And of course, the normal dad advice about going to college with your kids. But I said, listen, when you go play baseball, you find the kid on your team that works harder than anybody else, and you stick by that guy. I don't care if you like him. You stick by that guy, because that guy has a big perspective. He has a 30,000-foot level. He sees the future. He's an eagle. I said, don't run around with the turkeys, the guys that keep their heads to the ground. They want you to kind of join them so that they make themselves feel better. Soar with eagles, don't run with turkeys. Use failure as fuel. Has anybody here ever failed? Of course you have. Man, life's no fair. It stinks. Why'd this happen to me? Use it as fuel. Never stop living your field of dreams. Failure is great fuel if used wisely. Do not let what you cannot do interfere with what you can do. I can't take credit for that. That was a famous quote by Coach John Wooden. What a great man of God, and how many lives he touched by coaching kids. Keep your eyes on the prize, not the poop. You ever stepped in dog poop? Everybody in this room has stepped in dog poop. Did you throw your shoes away? No. You wiped them off and you kept going. Keep your eyes on the prize, because life has a lot of poop in it. Keep battling. Stay on target. Two things happened in 1977 that I think were the greatest things that happened in the history of that year. The Seattle Mariners were formed, and Star Wars Episode 4 came out. 1977. When I was 12 years old, I saw Star Wars and I was blown away. Changed my life. Unbelievable. And the greatest scene is when Luke Skywalker and the rebellion are attacking the Death Star. And they go in to make their final run, and they go into the canyon and the Death Star, and they're doing Mach 50. What kind of fighter is Luke Skywalker flying? Thank you, X-Wing fighter. This is common knowledge. Everybody in this room should have known. X-Wing fighter. And he goes into the trench. He can't go backwards because Darth Vader and the stormtroopers are chasing him in their TIE fighters. Guys, we can't go backwards. He can't go side to side, because if he does, he's going to hit the walls and he's going to explode. He can't get out of the trench because there's blasters shooting at him. He has one direction that's straight ahead. And he's going, stay on target, stay on target, stay on target. Switches on his blaster. He hears, use the Force, Luke. Shoots the torpedo into the ventilation shaft, goes down in the nuclear reactor, explodes, Death Star blows up, rebellion continues. 9 movies later, whatever. Stay on target. Don't drift off and think about all the stuff that happened to you behind. It does no good. Stay on target and stay focused. You know, the baseball players, we cross these lines when we play. When you cross the lines of a baseball field, when you cross the lines of a football field, when you cross the lines of a basketball court, when you cross the lines of a soccer field, well, soccer's not a real sport, so I don't really think about that, but JK. Or you cross the lines of life, you play like your stinking hair's on fire every single second you get a chance to play the game. There is only one way to play the game, all out, all the time. I got the scars to prove that on a baseball field, I play all out all the time. I got the scars to prove in life that you play out all the time. Only one way to play the game. Last thing. The reason we play the game so hard, we get one shot at this game. One shot. Put everything in it. And when you look in the mirror, at the end of the game, at the end of your life, at the end of the season, you ask yourself, did I do everything I could to be the best father, the best husband, the best partner, best friend that I could be? Because the last thing you want to do is say, if I only would have done this, or I only would have done that, maybe I could have been this. There's no maybes. Men, be bold for the gospel of Jesus Christ. Be bold. All out, all the time. You never know who needs to hear this. I've gone through a lot of sad days. I've gone through a lot of hard days. Trying days. Let me tell you the saddest day of all is when somebody stands before God and he says, why should I allow you into my heaven? And his name's not written in that book of life. That's a sad day. He knows at that moment he's separated from God from all eternity. But when we share the gospel, we bring people to Christ, and when I get to stand before God and he says, why should I allow you into my heaven? It is not because I was a Major League Baseball player. It was because Jesus is standing right here, and because of what he did on the cross and the blood that he shed, and because I have accepted him in my life, Jesus says, it's finished. I will hear, well done, good and faithful servant. That's the goal. That's the opportunity that we have every single day. I'm a blessed man. I'm blessed. I got to play a game I love. I have children. I've had fortune. I've lost fortunes. Sometimes things happen. Hard things happen to good people at times, and we can't explain it. We don't understand why, and we may never know why. But that's not up to us. When I was a financial advisor, we have to sing at Ron Blue and Company, God owns it all. Owns it all. Owns our money, he owns our cars, owns our houses, he owns everything. We just have it on loan. And all of a sudden it starts getting taken away. And you start going, do I really believe that God owns it all as it's going? He does. He owns it all. Be bold for the gospel. Never quit. Ever. No matter how thick the poop gets, you stay focused on the goal. Stay focused on the prize. And when you cross the lines, play like your hair's on fire. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we're so grateful to you for your incredible word, for your witness, for all that you've done for us. Lord, we go through hard things in life. We go through hard things as men. We go through hard things as families and fathers. And Lord, I know that there are men here today who are struggling. It could be financially, it could be spiritually, it could be with many things, their marriages, whatever. Father, I pray that you would just lift them up, that you would meet them where they are, that you would encourage them, that you would give them strength to go on each day, to help them to stay focused on the prize, which is heaven. And Father, I know that there are talented people here. I would ask that you would take their talents and multiply them for your fame and purpose, God. And I also know, Father, there may be men here who are struggling with their faith or that they don't know you personally. And Lord, I ask that you would help them come to know you this morning. I ask and pray that you would soften hearts, you would open minds and ears, and you would help them break down all those barriers and calluses and walls that they put up to run from you. If there's anybody in this room this morning that needs God, I would ask that they would follow me in this simple prayer. It goes like this. Heavenly Father, I thank you for being here this morning. I pray, Father, that you would come to me. I open my heart to you, and I give you my life. I pray that you would just change my heart. Help me to focus on you, and I make you Lord of my life. Thank you, Lord, for being there. Thank you for coming into my life, and may I help to serve and honor you every day from here on out. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.